Morning, all. All right, so welcome back to the Montreal Canadiens Dynasty Hour. It's 58-59. The Montreal Canadiens continue to roll. In fact, they're the only hockey team that year in the National Hockey League with a positive goal differential. Yeah. They're 39, 18, and 13 on the season, 91 points. They score 258 goals, and they allow 158. So, that's pretty impressive, considering nobody else had a positive goal differential that year. They finished with a record of 9-1-4 against Detroit, who tumble from their previous purchase, 1 or 2 in the league. Chicago, they finished 8-1-5 against a Chicago team that's getting better. They're just not getting better against Montreal. Boston's the only team that manages a 500 record against Montreal, as the Bruins and Montreal Canadiens have a 6-6-2 season record against one another. Boston is second in the league that year, 32-29-9. They score 205 goals. They allow 215 goals with 73 points. They're 18 points behind first place Montreal. They go 8-5-1 against Detroit. So again, the Wings just struggling overall. They were 6-7-1 against Chicago. So Chicago finishes third. 28-29-13 record. They score 197 goals, score 208. 69 points for them. They finish ahead of Toronto and New York, in part because they play well against both. They have a record of 7-4-3 against both the Rangers and the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Leafs, they get back into the playoffs with 65 points, a record of 27-32-11, 189 goals scored, 201 goals against, a 6-6-2 record against the Boston Bruins. Not a lot of positives for Toronto that year, other than they get better than they were the year before. The New York Rangers missed the playoffs by 1 point. They're 26-32-12 on the season, 64 points, 201 goals scored, 217 goals against. They finished 5-8-1 against the Montreal Canadiens, and we'll talk about the Rangers. We'll get there in a moment. Detroit finishes last in the NHL, 25-37-8 record, 167 goals scored, 218 goals against, 58 points. The only team they had a positive record against was Chicago. They were 7-6-1 against Chicago. The Rangers and Toronto, they were 6-7-1 against both, and they had a rough record against both the Boston Bruins and the Montreal Canadiens that season. So remember, when you get tired of seeing the same team, and it's only the fourth time you've seen them that season, these teams played each other 14 times each. So, yeah. The New York Rangers, they were in a playoff spot. They looked pretty secure in that playoff spot, ahead of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And then they fell apart in that final stretch of the season. In fact, they went 3-6-1 in their last 10 games. They ended up missing the playoffs by losing the game on the final night of the season, that if they'd won it, they would have put them into the playoffs. And February 15th of 1959. So we'll go over to this part here because it's all kind of related. The Habs score 5 goals in the final 10 minutes to win by a score of 5-1. Yeah, the Rangers have been shutting them out and then just forgot how to play hockey for those final 10 minutes. And after the game, the team is ordered to go out and do a workout. Yep. The only player who was exempt from that workout, Gump Worsley, because the coach felt that he was the only one who played well. And since the Rangers allowed 5 and 10 minutes, puts them out on the ice. And to think, they ended up missing the playoffs anyways. New Leafs general manager Punch Imlach, who we will be talking about as this series rolls along, he would fire Billy Ray and take over behind the bench as coach that season. So Punch Imlach putting his stamp on this team right away, and Toronto does get better, so it does work for them. June 3rd of 1958, so prior to this season getting started, the Maple Leafs acquire Johnny Bower. They draft him from an AHL team, and so Johnny Bower becomes their goaltender, and he would lead them to the promised land, I believe, a few times. March 15th of 1959, Ted Lindsay plays in his 928th career game. That sets an NHL record. He's only one ahead of Gordie Howe at the end of the season, but he's still the record holder. March 22nd of 1959, with the 91st and what would be final point of the season for Jean Beliveau, he sets a record for NHL centers in a season. March 22nd of 1959, Habs Dickie Moore scores his 96th point, and that's a new NHL record for points in a season. Breaks Gordie Howe's record of 95 from years earlier. December 13th of 1958, Gordie Howe scores his 400th career goal, Little would he have known at the time that was only halfway through how many he was going to get. April 18th of 1959, the Habs become the first team in National Hockey League history to win 4 straight Stanley Cups. Spoiler alert, they're not done at 4. February 15th of 1959, yeah, that's where that happens with the whole Rangers thing, and the Rangers collapsing down the stretch being one of the bigger stories during that season. So the Hart Trophy surprisingly goes to Andy Bathgate and the New York Rangers. And I don't say that because, I'm trying to talk badly about Bathgate. I'm sure he was a valid winner. But it is odd to see a Hart Trophy go to a player who plays on a team that misses the playoffs. The Art Ross goes to Dickie Moore of the Montreal Canadiens. The Calder Trophy goes to Ralph Backstrom, also of the Montreal Canadiens. The Norris Trophy goes to Tom Johnson of the Montreal Canadiens. The Vezina Trophy goes to Jacques Plante of the Montreal Canadiens. You guys are getting it. The Lady Byng goes to Alex Delvecchio of the Detroit Red Wings. Exactly. So, yeah, Montreal dominating in the awards. And when it comes to the All-Stars, they're pretty prominent there, too. Your first and second team centers are from Montreal. Jean Beliveau and Henri Richard, respectively. On the right side, Andy Bathgate of the Rangers is the first team All-Star. Gordie Howe of the Detroit Red Wings is the second team All-Star. On the left side, Dickie Moore of the Montreal Canadiens is first team All-Star. Alex Delvecchio of the Detroit Red Wings, second team All-Star. On the blue line, Tom Johnson of the Montreal Canadiens and Bill Gadsby of the New York Rangers are first team All-Stars. On the second team, Marcel Pronovost of the Detroit Red Wings and Doug Harvey of the Montreal Canadiens. In net, Jacques Plante of the Montreal Canadiens is first team All-Star, and Terry Sawchuk, back with Detroit, is back where he belongs with the second team All-Star honors. So Dickie Moore does lead the league in scoring that year. Scores 41 goals, 55 assists for 96 points in 70 games. Jean Beliveau, 64 games for him with the Habs, 45 goals, 46 assists, 91 points. Andy Bathgate of the Rangers, 70 games, 40 goals, 48 assists, 88 points. Gordie Howe of the Wings, 70 games, 32 goals, 46 assists for 78 points. Ed Litzenberger of the Chicago Blackhawks, 70 games, 33 goals, 44 assists, 77 points. In goal, it is Jacques Plante leading the way, 38, 16, and 13 record, 925 save percentage, 9 shutouts. Glenn Hall in Chicago, 28, 29, and 13, 897 save percentage, 1 shutout. Gump Worsley in New York, 26, 29, and 11, 908 save percentage, 2 shutouts. Don Simmons in Boston, 24, 26, and 8, 897 save percentage for him, 3 shutouts. Terry Sawchuk in Detroit, 23, 26, and 8, 896 save percentage, 5 shutouts. And Johnny Bower in Toronto, 15, 17, and 7 record, but a 914 save percentage, 3 shutouts. Tells you he's pretty good. So I'm going to spotlight penalty minutes just a little bit today. Ted Lindsay led the league in penalty minutes that year with 184. Lou Fontinato is the tough guy in the league. He had 149 penalty minutes. So terrible Ted Lindsay leads the league in penalty minutes. Not a surprise. And February 1st, Lou Fontinato, who had a back and forth going with Gordie Howe. Gordie Howe, I believe it was Eddie Shack that Fontinato felt he was taking liberties with. Well, Eddie Shack could have defended himself as well, but what ends up happening is that they have a big fight, and Gordie Howe breaks the tough guy's nose. And that is seen as one of the watershed moments that leads to the New York Rangers falling out of the playoffs. Just that the team starts rolling in the wrong direction, and seeing their tough guy getting humiliated like that didn't sit that well. Also, with Fontinato, while I was researching for this video, he is the great uncle of Greg McKegg, who played in the NHL not too long ago, and now there will be people saying the Dr. Nick phrase in the comment section, because every time Greg McKegg's name comes up, that happens. In the semifinals that year, so again, we're in a situation where it's 1 versus 3, 2 versus 4, which makes Boston happy because they don't want it to be 1 versus 2. Montreal wins both games at home against Chicago in their series, 4-2 and 5-1 to go up 2-0. Chicago wins the third game at home 4-2, then wins the fourth game at home 3-1 before Montreal wins at home 4-2. So it's all home serve, no problem, until Montreal wins game 6 5-4 and wins the series in 6 games. Then in the other series, Toronto's against Boston. Boston roars out to a 2-0 series lead with wins at home by scores of 5-1 and 4-2. And then Toronto, overtime's their friend. They win at home in overtime in both games 3 and 4 by scores of 3-2. Then they win in Boston 4-1. Boston then wins in Toronto to stay alive 5-4 before Toronto wins in Boston 3-2. So it was home service in that series until the final 3 games where the road team wins all 3 and Toronto wins the series 4-3. My theory is Boston was ahead 3-2, realized they were going to have to play Montreal in the next round and went, that's a bad matchup for us. There you go. In the Stanley Cup final, it is Toronto, it is Montreal, a series that if you could somehow make that a Stanley Cup final now, you could print money with the what the ratings would be and how crazy it would be. Montreal wins both games at home, 5-3 and 3-1 respectively, and then Toronto wins 3-2 in overtime in Game 3 to extend the series. But Montreal wins in Toronto in Game 4 to go up 3-1 with a 3-2 win before winning at home 5-3 to win the Stanley Cup in 5 games. More 11 games, 5 goals, 12 assists, 17 points to lead the playoff scoring. Marcel Bonin of the Montreal Canadiens next up with 10 goals, 5 assists for 15 points in 11 games. Jacques Plante had a 2.33 goals against average in a playoffs which didn't feature any shutouts. So scoring is going up a little bit here and there. Scoring is going to go up a lot about a decade from now. But we're not there quite yet. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.